With deficits exploding, yields dropping, and the labor market weakening, Jerome Powell and the Fed are backed into a corner. But as Lyn Alden says,
nothing really stops this train. I think this is kind of locked in.
Welcome to Bitcoin Simply with Dante Cook. If you want Bitcoin in finance and macro and the economy to be made simple, I'm your guy. Let's get into today's show. Since my first video aired last Friday with Dan Campbell, the head coach of the Lions, going and joining the Applebee's team, well, Dan Campbell's put on a few pounds, and his new name is Kevin Zeitler, and he's playing guard. The U.S. has been putting on an incredible amount of debt, adding over $380 billion to its deficit just in August. $380 billion. As Lyn Alden says, this train isn't stopping. Check out this recent interview she had with Charles Payne and the 6 reasons why she believes that these structural problems are here to stay.
Talk to us a little bit, because you outlined 6 items on why deficits are so sticky and how we've gotten to this problem.
Right. So a lot of it is built in over decades. So Social Security, the way it was designed many decades ago, did not really account for slowing population growth. And so when they project out what that's going to look like, there's fewer people paying in for every retiree. And so that's expected to run dry by 2035. We have the highest per capita healthcare costs in the world. A lot of that's on the government ledger. And we don't really have higher average care quality to show for it. So we have kind of inefficient administration overhead in our healthcare system. Very large military expense, a number of different factors. And now interest expense is actually becoming a pretty meaningful item. And so as this kind of goes on, it becomes a pretty structural issue.
The money at the foundation of our system is so manipulated that every other thing built on top of it, including the data that drives and manipulates the money further, is so out of whack that these numbers are not even believable at this point. Take the CPI, for example, which came in at 2.5% for August. Who actually believes that CPI is at 2.5% when you have electricity up 3.9%, food away from home up 4%, car repairs up 4.1%, home ownership up 5%, hospital services up 5.4%, transportation up 7.9%, and car insurance up 16.5%. I mean, no wonder that Progressive has been trolling us with flow ads for the past 10 years. It seems pretty obvious that they've been the ones laughing all the way to the bank this entire time. The returns for Progressive over the last 10 years are up 1,004% compared to 241% for the S&P 500. They're laughing all the way to the bank while the everyday average person is struggling to make it. Anyways, back to the point. When money is manipulated, everything built on top of that money is also corrupted. The CPI print at 2.5% doesn't make any sense unless you understand that the CPI and inflation numbers are one of the key and primary drivers for the Fed to enact and change policy. Again, everything else that sits on top of the corrupted money is manipulated. I love this clip from Jeff Booth because it explains this concept very succinctly.
Well, you have manipulated money. Every price signal has to be manipulated. And money is just an abstract concept for our time. People don't want more money. They think more money will give them. So when you have misinformation and money, which is just the division of our labor, and it's all it is trust, wouldn't it be obvious that if you are trying to remove trust, trying to give misinformation in money, you'd have misinformation everywhere in society? And that's what's happening. And so to be able to perpetuate that lie, you have to control. You have to remove individual rights and freedoms and drive more control to perpetuate that lie.
This puts America in a dangerous place and essentially renders all of the tools that the Fed and central bankers have as useless. Back to the Lyn Alden interview for another moment. She describes the worst case scenarios of the fiscal dominance train that is not stopping.
The worst outcome is that basically the central bank kind of loses control of its ability to do monetary policy, because if you have an illiquid or otherwise unfunctioning treasury market, the Federal Reserve has to come in and essentially backstop it, and then you risk inflation. You risk kind of structurally large fiscal deficits, of which some of it is monetized, and you can go into a pretty significant period of currency debasement. And there's other investors that are kind of looking out. For example, Ray Dalio is concerned 4 or 5 years down the line for that becoming a problem. The exact time frame is hard to measure exactly, but I think we're already seeing around the margins a number of consequences from these very large, big deficits, the inflationary backdrop that they add, and some of the pressures they put on different parts of the economy.
Which leads me to my general point and the main thesis of my whole argument for today's episode, that socialism is guaranteed in America, and it's actually been happening for a long time. Let me explain. Since the year 2000, everyone has said that America's economy has been flourishing for the capitalists, that if you worked hard, pulled yourself up by the bootstraps, you've been able to generate an enormous amount of wealth. But when I dig a little further, I don't believe that that's the true story, although it's a good one to believe and it makes for great movies. When the market started on Wednesday, it was a bloodbath. Don't quote me on that, Kamala. The markets erased an unbelievable amount of market cap within the first hour, between $600 and $700 billion, being down over 1%. But like magic, the markets bounced back to life, like Lazarus after Jesus came out of the cave, or like zombies in Michael Jackson's Thriller video. I mean, look at that thing. Look at this chart. It's like a roller coaster. It makes you sort of think that this bounce back is unnatural or unbelievable. In researching how many times the market's been down over 1.5% and it has finished the day up 1%, it's happened about 20 times since 1999. And what's interesting is after every single one of these times, you see this up and to the right action, as if we're just going to shrug this thing off and manipulate this thing even higher. And you know the conclusion that I've come to? It's not because of capitalism, or that every time Americans get knocked down, they somehow come back stronger and harder and better. It's because the rules of the game have rigged it so that there are socialized gains among the wealthy and the people who own assets. The next recession won't happen because of a slowdown in the real world. The real world is already slow. It'll happen because the S&P 500 crashes. Take a look at these charts that I had my assistant Claude put together. If you look at corporate profits as a percent of GDP, it's at its highest level that it's ever been, at over 10.2%. These have structurally increased since 2000. And if you look at corporate taxes and the percent they are towards GDP in other measures, they've gone down structurally since the 70s, but more specifically, since 2000. Gains have been socialized towards the rich, and in this current system, I'm not blaming the wealthy people. I don't consider everyone who has money to be a bad person or somehow some evil, corrupt person. But would you rather hold your money in cash to be melted away, or would you put it in some scarce, desirable asset? I think they've all chosen the latter and continue to do so. That's the case with a Republican Party, but with the Democratic Party, there's going to be another form of potential socialism. There's going to be an increase in corporate taxes, proposals of free education, free schools, mortgage stipends for first-time homeowners, and it feels like we're going to continue to send money towards other places in the world and other countries, like Ukraine, which now has received more money than the entire Marine Corps altogether.
We're going to send to Ukraine more money than we spend on our own Marine Corps. This is a bill about Ukraine first.
This sort of behavior symbolizes what people normally think of as socialism or Marxism. Regardless of where you stand, the manipulation either creates socialism for the rich or socialism for the poor. But socialism is guaranteed at any rate when you manipulate the money and you create money out of thin air.
The people most hurt by that lie are the most susceptible to believing in it. Correct. And will vote to keep it going, because the thing that's hurting them and transferring that wealth to the 0.1% at an increasing rate. And it's not by the way, it's not the billionaires that are creating it. It's the system that's creating it. The billionaires are just, what would you do if you had your choice of cash that was being devalued? Would you put that into a house? Would you put that into something else that couldn't be devalued? And if a country was trying to stop you from doing that, you would move your assets to another country.
The most disappointing thing about the debate at large is that everyone focused on these symptoms about education, about the economy, about healthcare, about insurance, about things related to geopolitics. These are surface level causes, but they never address the root problem, the money. If we don't fix the money, we stay on the hamster wheel regardless of who is elected in office, Republican or Democrat. We stay in a two-party system that seeks to corrupt people on both sides. And the average American is left with very few choices in either of these worlds, because they have what Michael Saylor calls is the investor's dilemma, where if they don't have a better return than the inflation in the real world or the monetary inflation, then they are getting poorer. And because there are only a few asset classes that beat monetary inflation, Bitcoin is now the new hurdle rate. At 46% over the last 4 years, it significantly outpaces the S&P, the Magnificent Seven, bonds, or other means that people have been told will preserve their wealth. Michael Saylor recently gave a presentation to investors about institutional adoption of Bitcoin, which I believe, pound for pound, is his best speech and presentation that he's given. In this presentation, he talks about the wealthiest people in the world, aka John D. Rockefeller, was able to harness and transform physical energy into a commodity that we can all use. And he did this through the company of Standard Oil. This allowed him to create the world's most important assets, companies, and systems that now control how the world works altogether. In the 21st century, there was this guy, gal, others, named Satoshi Nakamoto, who was able to harness and transform digital energy and make it a usable commodity to create the world's wealthiest companies, organizations, and people for the 21st century. And what's crazy is Bitcoin provides the best risk-adjusted returns of any asset class. If you look at this chart from Fidelity, not only does it provide the best Sharpe ratio at 0.97 over the last 5 years, it also does so at a low correlation to the S&P 500 or the S&P index. The Bitcoin protocol is our new economic constitution. It creates a standard for the rules and the rulers, and we all play on the same playing field. We all have the same access, the same opportunity, and the same ability to get in the game and to become one of the John D. Rockefellers like there were in the 20th century. The Bitcoin network is the new base layer. It becomes the new arbiter, ruler, accountant, bookkeeper, record keeper of value creation and the exchange of value and goods in the 21st century. And it's globally native. So we don't have to deal with different countries, different governments, or organizations fighting on what's the scorecard. The Lightning Network allows us to build the transactional layer, the ability for us to do commerce, again, globally native through a protocol that allows anyone in any currency, any place, at any time in the world to exchange value. And the crazy thing is, this is just the beginning and more innovations are coming on top. My final message in conclusion is, regardless of who you vote for and what you believe about America being a capitalist society, I don't believe that it has been. I believe that it's been socialized or socialism all along. Just socialism towards the rich or the people that have assets. It's been the haves versus the have-nots. But moving forward, we can elect what sort of economy that we want to have. Bitcoin represents an opportunity for the most free capitalistic society and economy that we've ever seen. We have a choice. We can vote with our votes physically, or we can vote with our time, talents, energy, and treasures towards a new future and a new paradigm that creates more access and more opportunity for everyone. As always, I'm here to help you navigate this new world. If you have questions, you don't understand something about what I said, and that's why I've created Columbus. Columbus is an online digital community where we help people navigate their questions, concerns, comments, and thoughts about Bitcoin in an online digital way. Don't respond in narcissism and don't respond in apathy. Oh, the future is heading towards socialism, and we don't have a choice about what the outcome can be. We always have a choice. And I hope that you choose with your time, your talent, and your treasures to build the future that you want to see versus contributing to a future that you don't believe in or don't agree with. And instead of denigrating the people who are leaders right now, maybe you become a leader. Maybe you lead with your time, talent, and treasures to create the future that you want to see. And with that, we're signing off for today. This is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. Happy stacking.